So people want to move to Virginia Beach. People are always thinking about Virginia Beach as a place to live, great destination spot, a great place to come from the south, the north, the west. It's a great place to live, but it can be very, very different from where you're coming from. So today we're going to be talking about 10 rules that are very important to keep in mind now when you're planning to move to Virginia Beach. And we're starting right now. So these 10 rules cover a variety of topics. So number one is keep other cities on your radar. So Virginia Beach is a large city. It has a large amount of houses, great large land size, but there are other cities around there that people don't often think about when they're planning to move to Virginia Beach. The reason is because Virginia Beach is the most popular city name. It's the most often searched city, but around there, there are places that are literally on the border of Virginia Beach that you wouldn't even realize are not Virginia Beach. You'd think the whole area is Virginia Beach. Chesapeake is a fantastic city that's just next to Virginia Beach. It's a very large land size as well, and that also borders a place called Norfolk, and also Portsmouth and Suffolk. Those are cities that are just next to or further west of Virginia Beach that anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes you could drive from to get to Virginia Beach if you're planning to be somewhere near Virginia Beach, but you want other options for housing. Virginia Beach has the most in-demand housing or the most expensive housing anywhere in the South Side or in the Hampton Roads area. So if you go to other cities like Chesapeake, like Norfolk, like Suffolk, maybe even Portsmouth, for example, you can find more bang for your buck for houses as opposed to being specifically in the city of Virginia Beach. Caveat to that is Chesapeake has caught up in a lot of places to Virginia Beach as far as demand and prices go. So that is almost the same at this point in some spots, especially if you're comparing some school districts. And that actually leads me to the next topic, which is be flexible with your school districts. If you're coming here and planning to move for a school district or an area because you like the schools, you look online, niche.com, greatschools.org. You got some great high-ranking schools there. However, researching the schools based on just the rankings, to me, might not be a fully exhaustive search process. So I would suggest doing other things, including things like going on Facebook groups and seeing what other people recommend, people that have experienced those schools. Going on to even Niche and Great Schools have personal reviews that you might see on those websites that might help as well. Get as many details and references from people that have been in the schools and can give you more context as to why they do or don't like the schools. So the reason I say this is because people often come to Virginia Beach and want a very specific set of schools, often like the top 3 or top 4 schools in Virginia Beach. And in doing that, you'll get to a great school ranked wise, and that doesn't mean that they're not good schools. It's just that leads to the most demand for those areas because a lot of people are doing the exact same thing. They're looking for houses based on those school districts. My opinion is I would do research for the entire area and check other schools as well, because you can get a spot maybe in a school you might still like, but that may not be as high ranked, quote unquote, in Great Schools or niche.com, but it has all the things you're looking for area wise, neighborhood wise, everything else, and you still like the school as well. And then you can also maybe get a cheaper house to boot. So that's why I say make sure you do some research beyond just looking at those rankings and then getting caught up in just the numbers, just that A minus, 9, 8 ranking you might see on a place like Great Schools or niche.com. Virginia Beach is known to have very high demand schools. And so just because you're not the top on the rankings list in a very high demand school area doesn't mean that the rest of the schools are chopped liver, so just make sure you do some research on that to make sure you get the school you want, but it may not be the one that is the quote highest ranked on the list. That's a huge way to save some money when you're coming to buy a house in Virginia Beach. Now the next one is do not get fixated on the proximity that you are to the beach. The reason I say that is people want to be able to have walking distance or easy bike access or easy access to the beach. That's great. But as soon as you hop out of your car, get on your bike, and you can walk from your house to the beach, that price for that house is going way up. You can get the same house that's walking distance to the beach, and you can move it back 2 miles or 3 miles away from the beach, and you're going to be paying possibly half the price, if not more than that. So if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I want to be real close to the beach, no, keep in mind that because the beach is a very scarce resource, people want to do that same thing. And that competition, that demand increases the demand or the prices of the houses closest to beaches. So if you can find a place you like that's off of the beach, a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, or anywhere beyond that, I would suggest considering that and getting a cheaper value as long as you're okay with driving your car to the beach. As soon as you are forced to take your car from your house to the beach and park again, the cost of that house is going to most likely be a whole lot less for the same thing. That convenience, that feel of the beach carries a big premium. So my thing is, as soon as you are thinking about finding a place off the beach to where you have to drive your car, in my opinion, it's like, hey, if you got to take 6 minutes or 14 minutes, I mean, what's really that big of a difference? It's going to possibly save you a lot of money to be 14 minutes away as opposed to 6. So I would consider, if you want to save some money, if you want to get the best bang for your buck away from the beach, you go a little bit further out, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And you still are close. You can get there in a real short period of time compared to wherever you may have been. But it's not going to be super close. You're going to be paying so much more for the same house. On the flip side, if you want to be close to the beach, be prepared to pay a lot more. That's totally fine, because compared to other parts of the coast that have beaches, it really isn't that unaffordable in relation. You can find houses within walking distance for, $800,000 in that range, and even possibly 6 or 7 sometimes. Or under that, if you're willing to walk a little bit further away from the beach. However, again, it all is about what your preferences are and your values are. But if you want to save some money, bump back up a little bit. And if you have to get in the car to drive to the beach, might as well check other spots further away just to make sure. That leads me to a very important one that it really matters to me a lot. That is a fascinating one in this area is make sure you know your neighborhoods. Research them very, very well. When you come from a different part of the country or a different part of the world and you look online, you see certain houses, pictures, Zillow listings, it's very hard to tell where in the world that house is. And so that's one of the reasons why I love making these videos, is because it helps you gain an idea of perspective on what the area around it looks like and get a better feel, so you don't have to make these blind leaps into different parts of the area without getting some more research. Get as much information about any neighborhood you're looking for as much as possible, because there are some nuances in a lot of the neighborhoods in Virginia Beach that are different just enough to where you might think, oh man, if I had just done a little bit more research, I would have not been away from this neighborhood with no sidewalks and would have been to this neighborhood with sidewalks, but the same kind of house. Because Virginia Beach also is kind of a scattered amount of houses, different styles, different time periods built. And so you have a lot of randomness in the city. And so just because you see a house and a picture of it, you might be picturing a certain type of setting around it that might not be what it actually is. And so that's where doing the research, checking videos like what I've got here, doing research online, asking people that you might know that already live here to find out, make sure you know what you do and don't want in a neighborhood, and see if the neighborhoods that look the best to you on Zillow or on any agent website or whatever you see, make sure those neighborhoods actually fit the idea that you might have in your head for what those areas look like. There are places in Virginia Beach that are very, very cheap. The house might look great. The price looks awesome. You think, why is this house so cheap? There's always a reason why. So being intentional about neighborhood-specific research is incredibly important to your plan to move to Virginia Beach. It will be the difference between possibly buying a house that you wish you hadn't and buying the house that you absolutely love and might not ever want to leave. Find out where the parks are in relation to the neighborhoods you like. Make sure you know where the rec centers are. Some awesome local rec centers that we're members of. Make sure you know where the stores are in relation to those neighborhoods. How close is it to? Can you walk to where you want to go? In addition to that, check other statistics. Check crime statistics. Check the traffic. Those types of things. Those little details are not really always little details. They can be big details, especially things like traffic, where when you're doing research in Virginia Beach, traffic is very, very scattered here. It's not always really heavy, but knowing certain intersections, certain spots that traffic can really get heavy. If you live near one of those spots, it can be a torturous experience. Maybe you wish you hadn't lived in the spot that you picked. People don't check this next one out very much, which is know your interstates and where your house is in relation to those interstates. Okay, so you look on the map, you'll see Interstates 264 go across. It's like a belt, right? 264 goes across east and west. Interstate 64 goes north and south. Those two interstates, if you're close to those, you're not going to be that far away from a lot of the areas in the south side. So for example, if you live close to Town Center, Mount Trashmore, all around here, around the Independence Boulevard, Virginia Beach Boulevard, this whole area near Town Center, if you're close to there and off of there in a neighborhood, and you're 6, 7, 8 minutes away from a 264, that's not going to be but maybe 15 to 20 minutes away to places like downtown Norfolk, or going into Greenbrier. It's about 15, 17 minutes. As soon as you go into these top corners, for example, the north part of Little Neck, Great Neck over in this section here, the corner of Virginia Beach near the north end, and going sweeping down into the south side of Virginia Beach over near Pungo, South Central, these areas take a whole lot longer to drive through to get to the interstates. So if you're down in the south side, for example, near like Courthouse Estates is a very good example of a neighborhood that's far in the south corner, but requires a lot of driving to get to an interstate. If you want to get from the southeastern side and get over to downtown Norfolk, for example, that's going to take you 30 minutes, if not longer, depending on where you are. It could take you possibly 35 or 40 minutes to get to there from the beach, away from the interstate. The closer you are to an interstate in Virginia Beach, the more convenient it's going to be to get to other parts of the area. You don't have to deal with all these like side roads, because Virginia Beach is the king of side roads and highways that just go stoplight, stoplight, stoplight. So all that you can avoid by getting closer to the interstate. So if you can be close, that's a big deal. That leads me to another one that is very crucial if you've never been here before, which is know where the jets are flying. So on the eastern side of Virginia Beach, the Oceana Naval Air Station has jets, and it's a very important Navy base, but the fact that it's in a residential area on the eastern side of Virginia Beach means that you've got jets that fly in and out on a regular basis. It could be morning, afternoon, sometimes the evening. It could be on the weekends, weekdays. It could be several times a day. It could be one time for a day. The closer you are to the base, generally speaking, the louder those jets are going to be as they fly closer to your house, as they land or take off. So there's a very important map I want to show you called the AICUZ, AICUZ Jet Noise Zone Map. And what it does is it shows you almost like a color code as to where, in relation to the base, the noisiest areas are in relation to the base. So the darker the color is, the louder the jets are likely going to be in the area that you live. So you can literally take an address of the house that you're looking for and go to the map and look and see where that house is in relation to the dark colors on the map. Now, that does not mean that the entire city is going to have jet noise. The further west you go, generally speaking, you're going to be hearing less of it, if not zero. So I don't like jet noise. We moved into like the central-ish side of the city because we didn't want to be close to the jets. That was one of the reasons why. So if you see a lot of houses that are newer, check the noise zone map, because there's a better chance that houses built in the newer time periods fall in those higher jet zones, because as you go further east and southeast, there's a higher concentration of new houses in those areas, which is also where the base is. But that being said, not all older houses are away from it either. Just make sure you use this map as a frame of reference. And again, the far eastern side has the most of it, but going further west, you'll still hear some. It just depends on where. Next one, also important, check your flood zones. See where the house that you're looking at is in relation to high risk flood zones, namely AE, and sometimes A, but mainly AE. So flood zones are not all high risk flood zones. Every area has a flood zone. So even though you're in a very dry area, you still quote unquote your house will fall in a quote flood zone. I'll drop a link in the description to show you an example of a flood map that can help guide you into more research about whether or not your house falls in that flood zone. I would not use this as the only reference. Check with your insurance company, check with your real estate agent. Make sure you know this before you go far into the process of buying a house, because if the structure itself lies in a flood zone, you're going to be probably paying more insurance premiums for that flood insurance. It could be anywhere from a few $100s a year to $1,000, $2,000 or more dollars a year. And that might not matter as much to you, or it might a lot. So definitely keep this in mind. And just because a house does not require flood insurance does not mean that it is just devoid of concern of flooding. There are some houses and some areas that were in flood zone X that had flooding issues in the past, and of course, over time, those flood maps often change too. So just make sure you do your research before you make decisions. That being said, flooding is not a widespread issue in Virginia Beach. It is very specific and localized to parts of the city. So I would not say that this is a large thing. If you hear Virginia Beach, the name beach can associate with the word flooding. I would just be careful to not assume that just because your house is in Virginia Beach, it's going to flood. Well, make sure you also factor in and know the types of issues that can come up with different age houses in Virginia Beach. For example, there are a lot of houses in Virginia Beach built in the 50s and the 60s. Great houses. We live in a house built in the 60s. It's a very well-built house. That's one of the reasons why we love it. Now, that does not mean that it is devoid of issues because, again, old houses mean possibly more issues based on just the age of the house. For example, we just dealt with a situation where, we move into the house and there's just a bunch of Mickey Mouse plumbing stuff going on. I mean, over time, you got 50 years of people plumbing, and it may not even be someone licensed that's doing the work to the house 25, 30 years ago. Someone does some fix, and now you've got to deal with the repercussions of the bad fix that someone did 30 years ago. Like, that's a very common thing, and we just dealt with it recently ourselves. Same with electrical work, too. Anything that requires like a handyman as well. Like, you'll have more patchwork. Things over time, it's just like, if there's an issue, just because there's an issue doesn't mean it was repaired by someone who knows what they were doing or was licensed or whatever. Or on the flip side, for example, let's just say you wanted a house that was built in 2003. Well, that's 20 years from now. Well, what does that mean? A house built in 2003 might look pretty new, feel pretty new, but you've got a 20-year-old roof. You got a 20-year-old HVAC system. You got a 20-year-old windows, 20-year-old water heater. All these things add up to potentially having to repair and replace those things more as you go forward. So in the next 3-5 years, you might be doing a lot of those types of large-scale repairs, even though the house itself might actually be relatively new or feel new. Now, an older house, a lot of people that live in these houses take care of these houses very well, did a lot of renovations, for example, and may have done a lot of those large-scale replacements in the last, 3, 5, 10 years, which then means that the house you buy that was built in 65 or 55 might actually require less upfront maintenance than a house bought in 2003 because of those larger scale items that don't need to be replaced as quickly as that newer house. So make sure you know what part of the lifespan your house is in so you can make more decisions as to what to do. In addition to that, in the 80s, for example, 90s, polybutylene piping, Quest piping that was known to rupture in the 80s and 90s was very common in the area. So for several years, you'll have pipes that might have burst 10, 15, 20 years ago, or still might. A lot of those houses have had plumbing replaced since then, but not all of them. That's why it's important to get a home inspection as well. This is another example of a time-specific thing that was done in a very certain window of time in houses that might influence you when you buy your house. So just make sure and do some research. Just make sure you understand the home that you're looking at so you can make better decisions on if this house is for you or not. Now, rule number 9 is make sure you have realistic expectations on what kind of house you want for the price you want to pay. So if you're coming here because it's cheaper, and this is all about for your own price range, because if you want a house that's $500,000 and you can't get much of anything in where you're living, but you can get $500,000 here to get you a lot more, you might be expecting more than even what Virginia Beach can offer you. Don't bring, the expectations you have of the areas that you live in now and translate those to what you expect Virginia Beach to be. The reason I say that is because some people come here and sometimes they'll regret having moved here because while it has a lot of positives, sometimes those positives aren't the things that they might be looking for when they moved here. So while I'm not saying don't come, I'm just saying make sure you understand what the positives here are as well as the negatives. It can be very enticing to watch a bunch of videos. Like I try and be very balanced in my videos, but even then, sometimes people are a little surprised by what they see here and it might not be exactly what they're thinking or what they're expecting and they decide to move. It's not what they're looking for. That is totally fine, but everybody's different. And that's my point here is that if you're choosing to move here, please, if you can, make sure and come out here at least one time to do some research on the areas, what it's like here, and don't just rely on videos like what I'm making here. Make sure you come here and see it for yourself. At least 2 or 3 days, I think, will be a good start. I'll even give you a route of places to see, of neighborhoods to drive through to give you more perspective on what areas make the most sense. I do that all the time, but it helps to give more perspective on what the areas are like as opposed to just seeing and doing research and coming from a different area and just moving here without having actually been here. So just because it might be cheaper than what you're used to doesn't mean it's going to have everything that you might want. So just make sure that your expectations are calibrated according to what is actually here as much as you can. And that could include doing a visit before you move so you know what you're moving to. I feel like it sounds a little bit silly to say that, but a lot of people will make these decisions without coming here at all. And that's where I think people often make the biggest mistakes if they're not expecting what is accurately here. So all your research is done. You're ready to make the decision on which house that you you want. Now, the most important thing to keep in mind based on that is rule number 10, which is be ready for competition. Virginia Beach is very, very high in demand. That does not mean that it is a 2021 market or 2020 market where people are just like throwing caution to the wind, 25 offers on houses, all that stuff. That's not happening the way it used to. So it's a little bit easier for people that are moving. However, just because it's not like the way it was does not mean that it is a ghost town, because it is absolutely not. So, for example, if a house may have had 13 offers in 2022 or 2021, you might still see that house have 3 or 4 offers now. So what does that mean? It still means that there's competition. The people that can afford to buy want to buy in Virginia Beach and want to buy in specific areas. So the more research you do and know what spots you might like the most, be mentally prepared for other people that want the same kind of thing, because it happens all the time. So use those strategies that you have had practice in or even looked up to see like what are the best ways to get your offer accepted. Just know that you'll most likely have to use those strategies because it is extremely competitive, even now in a market that's not the way it was in 2022 or 2021. So if you have any more questions about living in Virginia Beach or anywhere from Virginia Beach through Williamsburg, this is what I do. I help people relocate to the area all the time. So if you have any questions, you need help, please let me know. I love doing this. I have my contact information in the description. You can reach out to me at any point and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And you can also look at more videos here to see more stuff about Virginia Beach through Williamsburg.